This video does contain some spoilers to the game Portal 2. If you've not played that game before, please play Portal 1, then 2 before watching this video. I have been playing Portal 2 for a very long time now. It is one of my favourite games, and it still has an active community to this day. But there is one thing that has always bothered me, and that is Wheatley. At some point in the game, you are told that he is designed to make bad decisions. But I want to know how many decisions were actually bad, because for the most part, Wheatley actually does some smart things. So let's start off with the very first thing that Wheatley does in the game. He wakes up Shell, you, the player. Does that count as a bad decision? Some could argue that it was, since you helped him reach GLaDOS in your attempt to escape and woke her up, thus starting the events of Portal 2. But I think that wasn't a bad decision, as you do make up for it later in the game, so that sort of cancels out the bad decision. And really, it wasn't even your fault. However, does Wheatley taking you to GLaDOS in the first place count as a bad decision? I think it does, as I'm pretty sure there were many other ways to escape without having to go into her chamber. Although, to be fair, the game never really makes it clear that was an option. Either way, I will count Wheatley taking you to GLaDOS as the very first bad decision he made. Now, let's move on to the next thing Wheatley does after you find out he's alive. Before you get into this chamber GLaDOS made, the door jams, requiring her to fix it. While she is away, Wheatley appears and explains his intentions to you. Does that count as a bad decision? From what I can tell, I do not think that is a bad decision, as Wheatley is simply letting you know what he intends to do, and that he is going to break you out of there when he has the chance. Although, he did use a bird's egg to jam the door, which causes the bird to appear later and attack him. So maybe that was the bad decision. I'm not sure if I should count this as a bad decision though. If you disagree, let me know in the comments. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing Wheatley does after explaining his intentions to you. During one of GLaDOS's chambers, the light suddenly turns off and everything stops working. Wheatley then appears, tries to trick GLaDOS with his voice, and then tells you to come over. As soon as you do, he gets you out of the chamber, beginning the escape sequence. Does that count as a bad decision? I don't see how that could be a bad decision in any way, as Wheatley followed up on his promise to break you out of the chamber. And as you are escaping, he explains the next part of his plan, which is to shut down the turrets and the neurotoxin generator. Again, does that count as a bad decision? I honestly can't see any problems with this either, so I'm not going to add that to the counter, which is still on 1 right now. Moving on, after you and Wheatley escape from GLaDOS, you start making your way to the turret production line. There, Wheatley breaks the glass, allowing you to take the master turret out of the scanner. Does that count as a bad decision? Again, no. Wheatley helped you, as there's no other way you could have gotten that door open, unless you knew the code or had the key for it. So again, I'm not counting that as a bad decision. Anyway, after you work out what you need to do here, you move on to the next target, the neurotoxin generator. Wheatley does his best to lead you there, but he does get lost. However, you don't have to follow him, as it's clear where you need to go. And getting lost isn't really a bad decision, so I'm not going to add that onto the counter either. When you arrive at the neurotoxin generator, you get to this part with a door that you can't open unless you press this button. Before you press the button though, Wheatley does attempt to hack the door open. Does that count as a bad decision? Maybe. It could have resulted in a bad thing happening if Wheatley did manage to get in, but that never happens, because you get the door open before he has the chance to do anything. The same applies when you get inside the control room, where Wheatley attempts to hack in there as well. But again, you stop him before he has the chance to do anything. So this does not count as a bad decision either, as the problem is solved by you. Now for the last few things Wheatley does before he betrays you. So he tells you to plug him into the core transfer thing when you finally confront GLaDOS, which you do, as there's nothing else you can do here. Then he agrees to the transfer, even though he did not know what that would do to him. Maybe that was a bad decision, as he did not know the consequences. But it's not like he could have known, not until GLaDOS herself told him how painful it was going to be. So I'm not going to count that either. However, we finally get to the part where the bad decisions start coming back again. After taking over the facility, Wheatley calls the escape lift for you. For a moment, he does wonder how he's going to get into it, but he says he'll figure it out. So you place your trust into him and enter the lift. But now you can't do anything, and Wheatley lets the power get to his head. From there on, everything goes downhill, and Wheatley does the following. 1. He betrays you. 2. He turns GLaDOS into a potato. 3. He punches the escape lift into the pit, sending you and GLaDOS down to Old Aperture. Let's start off with his betrayal. That was definitely a bad decision. First, Shell never gives up. GLaDOS learned that the hard way in the first game, and Wheatley will soon learn that same mistake as well, because now you'll be returning to get your revenge. So I'm going to add that to the counter. As for turning GLaDOS into a potato, you may be wondering, how does that count as a bad decision? Well, it's because you find GLaDOS eventually, and she is needed for later in the game. Without her, you won't be able to beat Wheatley. So yes, Wheatley turning GLaDOS into a potato does count as a bad decision. Onto the counter it goes. Point 3. Sending you to Old Aperture. Why is that a bad thing to do? Well, not only do you find GLaDOS down there, you also activate the gels, giving you access to them later in the game, which you use to get out of the traps Wheatley sets up after you escape his chambers. If Wheatley did not punch you into the pit, sending you down to the older parts of Aperture, not only would you not have GLaDOS, you wouldn't have the gels either, both things that are vital in taking down Wheatley. So yes, that was a bad decision. A decision made in anger, but a bad one nevertheless. Also, when you get to Wheatley, he puts the conversion gel, the white stuff made out of moon rock, into the chamber, which of course is a bad decision, as you use his own bombs to break the tube open. You also use his own bombs against him, so he made a bad decision to use them, even though he had bomb-proof shields. So, the total of bad decisions Wheatley makes is 7. Yes, I'm including what he does when he takes over the facility, which is to stop maintaining important functions that prevent the facility from exploding. Of course, you can disagree with this final assessment. Let me know why you think the count should be higher, and what did count as a bad decision. I'll try to read through them all and respond. At the end of the day, Wheatley didn't really make that many bad decisions. Some of them were good, but of course, the bad heavily outweighs all of the good that he did. However, we do need to keep in mind that during later parts of the game, Wheatley was high on power, so he clearly wasn't thinking straight. If you and Wheatley had taken down GLaDOS in a different way, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have betrayed you or turned evil, but we will never know. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, then give this video a like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more content. I'll see you next time.